And now we're going to the next session, and as a native New Englander, I'm very excited about our next keynote address from Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo. Her state apparently has the nickname of Little Rhody, but Gina's done some stuff, some pretty big things that we'll be hearing about in this next session. But here to help welcome her, I believe, is Jared Hutchings, right? Jared is the managing director of Peer Venture Partners, which he co-founded with Mark Campbell and veteran Silicon Valley venture capitalist Donald Lucas. Peer is focused on investing in blockchain and hosts an annual crypto event called Peer Summit. Peer Venture Partners is a key investor in Dash Digital Cash, which aims to be the most user-friendly and scalable payments-based cryptocurrency in the world. We are delighted to welcome Dash as a first-time sponsor of the SIEPR Economic Summit this year and really appreciate that support. So with that, let me turn things over to Jared Hutchings.
Yeah, well, it's an honor and connection to, it's an honor and pleasure to be here today. My connection to this gathering started many years ago when I was invited as an undergraduate student to join for a day of economic conversation by Don Lucas, who, for many of you here, is a dear friend, and we're so grateful for Don, and sad that he's not here with us today. But I'm grateful to him, and I'm grateful to the conference organizers that they've continued to make student participation an important part of this gathering. It meant a lot to me as an undergraduate student to participate in a day of conversation around economics. Before I introduce our moderator, David Crane, and Governor Raimondo, I want to make one note about Dash, only because, and John Chauvin, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's the first time a sponsorship developed for this event in this way. Dash is a blockchain-based cryptocurrency that branched off of Bitcoin in 2014. And one of the changes it made to the code was to implement some source of governance and treasury, such that in a public, transparent forum, token holders can vote on how a percentage of what would normally be mining block rewards can be used for development. And that treasury is largely used for software development, which is really critical for these projects to progress. But it's also been used to support charitable organizations. It's been used to sponsor academic research. And in the case of today, it was used to support this event, wherein a proposal was made, and by the way, anyone can make a proposal, and the token holders voted to support this event and a conversation around economics and how it affects human lives. And so I want to make one note of thanks. We are not an important part or investor in Dash. We're very small. It's very much a community organized project. And so I want to make one note of thanks to the token holders of Dash who all voted to support this event. And I want to make one other note of thanks to the SIEPR organizers, because putting on an event like this is an immense amount of work. And so thank you both to the Dash community and to SIEPR for this. So with that, I'll introduce first our moderator, David Crane, who is a lecturer in public policy at Stanford and president of Govern for California. Formerly, he was a special advisor to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and a partner at Babcock & Brown. He also serves on the board of the Goldman School of Public Policy. Governor Raimondo, the important thing I think you should know about Governor Raimondo is that were she a student in the famous marshmallow test, she would have clearly been one of the students that delayed gratification to wait to eat the marshmallow, not only 15 minutes, but probably years. When she took office in January of 2015, she became Rhode Island's first female governor and has worked hard to create jobs by attracting entrepreneurship, by helping existing businesses to grow, and to fostering innovation within the government. In 2015, when she took office, Rhode Island ranked dead last in unemployment rates and now ranks 28th in jobs. She has made investments to improve early education by tripling the number of public pre-kindergarten classes that are available, and is working to implement all-day kindergarten. And last year put forward a proposal to guarantee for every in-state student 2 years of free college or community college. And if I may, before I hand the time over to David Crane and Governor Raimondo, share a bit of fan text that I received in the recent weeks leading up to this summit from a friend of ours, Sarah from New York, who I invited to join us at our table. And I quote, "Oh, I'll be there. Gina Raimondo is speaking. I love her so." To which I responded, "I'm introducing Gina at the summit. Tell me more of, quote, you love her so." Sarah, "I would say I love her so because she's smart, intellectually honest, bipartisan and pragmatic, seems to prioritize doing what's right for the state above anything else, and my impression is that she appreciates the value of access to education and how critical it is to leveling the playing field." Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, wherever you are, I love you too. If you're here. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you all for being here. I thought we would begin by, I'll set the stage and make a few opening remarks, and then David and I are going to have a dialogue, and then, of course, I'm happy to answer any questions. Just a quick show of hands. Who's ever been to Rhode Island? Very good. You get an A. This class gets an A. Let's see here. Providence is behind us. Well, I always begin every talk, wherever I am, by encouraging people to come to Rhode Island. If you have, it seems like most of you have already been, so that's great. You ought to come back. For those of you who haven't ever been, you should come. It's a wonderful place to visit. It's increasingly an excellent place to do business. And hopefully by the end of this talk, I will have convinced you that Rhode Island has a functioning, flexible, innovative, accountable government. That's what we're moving towards, right? That's what we're moving towards. So I've met a few of you at lunch. You know, I hadn't always thought I'd go into politics. I had actually, for a while, I was a lawyer for about a day and a half. I worked at Paul Weiss in New York City. I spent a dozen years as an investor. And then I decided to raise my hand to serve the state that I loved, that I thought was in trouble because of a lack of leadership. So I left my firm and I ran for treasurer. And the reality is government, city level, state level, national level, we need to change the way we do business. We have to modernize the way we do business, embrace action, embrace risk-taking, and get serious about our problems. And that's what I've tried to bring to government, first as treasurer, as was said, and now as governor. There is very little risk. There's very little incentive in government to take a risk. Here we sit in the heart of Silicon Valley. There's a lot of incentive to fail quickly, fail cheaply, take risk, be innovative, and do things differently. Not so in government. So as a result, we've been stuck in an old way of doing things for a really long time, except it's not working anymore. And I came into office from business with a bias toward action and a bias toward wanting to do things differently. And for me, it's personal. You know, as was said, I've been very, very lucky and blessed. I came from a, middle-class household, 6 of us squished into one little house. I wound up at Harvard, top of my class, Rhodes Scholar, Yale Law School. All of it started, public buses, public parks, public schools. I had a chance. Someone gave me a chance to flourish. And all the kids out there today deserve that same chance. And when government fails, they don't get a chance. So let me set the stage for you about Rhode Island, what I inherited, what we're doing, and where we are now. The story of Rhode Island is that it once was a very vibrant economy. mainly rooted in manufacturing, specifically jewelry manufacturing. Right? Once upon a time, Rhode Island was the Silicon Valley of jewelry and jewelry design and jewelry manufacturing. But that industry declined, just like all manufacturing. Someone said Rhode Island is like the Rust Belt of the East Coast, and there's a lot of truth in that. And our leaders just watched the decline, such that when I ran for office in 2014, we had the highest unemployment rate in America, #1, despite the fact that we have Brown and RISD and we're nestled between New York and Boston. Shouldn't have been that way. We had a pension system that was second only to Illinois in how unfunded it was. In fact, when I worked on pension reform, I would stay up late pouring through the numbers, and the only thing that gave me hope was that Illinois was worse. I would study the math, and we would always be really bad, and then there was one more dot that was worse, Illinois. Budgets as far as the eye could see, and no real strategy. So I said, all right, we have to get to work. And we got to work with the philosophy of saying, we got to focus on the math, we have to commit ourselves to problem solving, and we have to have a serious discussion and not get bogged down in the politics or the partisanship. So the basic philosophy was, let's constrain our spending where we can, and then invest in economic growth. The two areas, so let's set the table. We have a $9 billion budget. About a third of our budget is spent on Medicaid, and that's true in California. The numbers are bigger. By the way, the entire story I'm about to tell is equally applicable in California, just add a few more zeros. $9 billion budget, a third is Medicaid, and growing quickly. And then the second biggest nut was pensions. So we said, okay, if you want to cut, if you want to have money to invest, you have to look at pensions, you have to look at Medicaid. And so we went after those. When I started the effort to reform our pension system, it was 45% funded, multi-billion-dollar unfunded liability, and I was deeply worried that people weren't going to get pension checks 20, 25 years into the future. We also had a city called Central Falls. Anybody ever heard of Central Falls? It's a 1 square mile city. It went bankrupt because of its pension problems. So we got to work. My tagline was, this is math, not politics. I built a broad coalition of support. It never was us versus them, labor versus management. And we said, we have a problem to solve. And I think we'll go into it in Q&A, so I won't draw out the story here. But the bottom line is, when we began our effort, everybody said to me, it's political suicide, it's not going to happen. Lots of people before me had tried it. Legislation, I had to get the legislature to go along with it. They were opposed. When we finished, our legislature, to their great credit, passed the most sweeping pension reform this country's ever seen by a vote of 36-2 in the Senate and 57-15 in the House. So they got it done. And that reform cut our unfunded liability in half, saves a couple $100 million a year for taxpayers of Rhode Island, secured the future of the pension system, and secured the future of our state. Medicaid, a third of the budget. First thing I did when I became governor is I said, we have to try to control the cost of health care, and we can have an extensive discussion around this. I went about it in the same way. I said, we have a few principles. Number one, we have to achieve a big savings. One thing, my philosophy is, if you're going to take on tough issues and political risk, go big. I don't want to tinker with the problems. I wanted to solve the problems. So we said we need to find $100 million of savings, and we're not going to cut eligibility. I'm very proud of the fact that 98% of Rhode Islanders have health care, and I don't want to go backwards there. And we said we're going to move the system from the most expensive places of care, hospitals and nursing homes, to less expensive settings, outpatient settings and home care. And we're going to try to have more transparency in pricing and cost. And we're going to incentivize for outcomes, not just volume. Again, spent a year on it. worked with the legislature. Same pattern. Started out saying, this is not going to work. Lobbyists came after us from nursing homes, from hospitals. It was a lot of change. Change is difficult. In the end, legislature passed our reform. In the first year of savings, our goal was 75 million. We achieved over 100. Second year, well over 100. These two reforms alone, on a $9 billion budget, save over $500 million a year. What are we doing with that money? We're investing in our future. So back to the basic premise. The name of the game is economic growth. Economic growth, widely dispersed, leads to a vibrancy that our state, and I think the people of our state, deserve. So what have we been investing in? Primarily education at every level. And by the way, because our state still has a deficit, I have prioritized interventions that don't cost a lot of money, but I think drive a lot of results. What am I talking about? We've said every high school student can take college classes for college credit for free. Prior to me becoming governor, you could take college in high school. You could take college classes, but it was $200 a class. Now that might not sound like a lot of money to people in this room. That is prohibitive. We said we're going to make it free. We took away the $200 barrier. We've seen 300% increase in the number of kids taking the classes. The number of kids I ran into a woman in the grocery store. She came up to me, she said, "Governor, you saved my family $50,000. I said, "How did I do that?" She said, "I have twins. And when we came out with that proposal, I told them, take as many college classes as possible while you're in high school. And we think they each got about a year of college under their belt in high school. Those kids are going to go, and they're going to graduate. The number one reason people don't graduate college is they can't afford it. They drop out because they can't afford the bill. We also invested in community college. We're one of the only states in America, maybe one of two, any student of any means graduating from any high school in Rhode Island can go to our community college tuition free for 2 years. This is the first year we're doing it. 43% increase in the number of kids going to our community college. And we said you got to go full time to get the scholarship because we want them to graduate and come out and get a job. This year, we're saying everyone takes the SAT during school for free. Same thing, tiny amount of money. We've seen a huge spike in the number of kids taking the SAT. Why? Because you have to take it in school. Not everyone can get a ride on a Saturday. Not everyone knows that they should take the SAT because no one in their family ever did. And not everyone can pay the money to take the test. So we've invested in that. We've seen great results. We're also putting, and again, I'm happy to talk about it, major investments in really hands-on workforce training. I set up a center of higher education. One of the biggest employers in Rhode Island is Electric Boat. They make submarines. The best, most sophisticated submarines in the world are made in Rhode Island. They're hiring thousands of welders over the next couple of years. When I became governor, I got a call from the president of Electric Boat. He said, "Hi, welcome to the office. Congratulations, we have a problem." I said, the first of many such phone calls. I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "We're doing great. We have all these contracts from the Navy. I don't know if I can fulfill the contracts because I can't hire as many people as we need with the skills that we need ready to work." I said, "All right, give me some time. We'll work collaboratively and solve the problem." We set up 6 welding programs in high schools. Almost every kid who's graduated from these welding programs from high school has gotten a job at Electric Boat. Good jobs with benefits, opportunity to advance, no college debt. And we also set up a higher ed center in a deep collaboration between our community college and Electric Boat. The first year we put that in place, over 500 people were trained and got jobs at Electric Boat. All kinds of people, mid-career who need to be retrained, and people at the beginning of their careers. So anyway, I know you've talked a lot this morning about human capital and investing in talent. It's a huge issue that we have as a nation, and we're doing something about it in Rhode Island. By the way, in partnership with business. Everything I've done has been in partnership with business because I believe solving these problems, job training, education, pensions, Medicaid, these are everybody issues. It's in everybody's interest to solve these problems. And if we approach them with a bias towards action, in a fact-based, math-based way, and really let people understand the consequences of not doing anything, you can solve problems. The sum total, what are the results of all of this work? We went from having the highest unemployment rate in America to being at the national average. Last year, our unemployment insurance claims were the lowest they've been in 50 years. When I took office, Gallup rated our Rhode Island's economy 50 out of 50. Last year, they rated us 23, and I think we're going to the top. Every year I've been in office, I've cut taxes. When I took office, the Tax Foundation ranked us 50 out of 50 in unemployment insurance taxes. They came out the other day with their ranking. We're 25. 1,600 kids are going to CCRI tuition free. 5,000 kids took college classes for college credit for free. 25 companies have relocated to come to Rhode Island in the past 24 months. And when I look out my office from the State House, there's 4 cranes in the sky, new development. So anyone who is feeling a little depressed that government is stagnant and overly partisan and can't be serious, I hope that the story I tell about Rhode Island offers you a little hope that we can solve problems. Everybody has to engage. What David's doing at Government for California is tremendously effective and essential to get behind people like me to empower us to take tough decisions. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't solve these problems, and by the way, pensions, Medicaid, same at the federal level, same here, there's going to be consequences for all of us. But if we do commit ourselves to these solutions, we can make it happen. We can absolutely make it happen. And I would argue that we have to. So thank you for listening, and I'll take my seat.
Thank you, Governor. That was terrific. And while you were speaking and you were comparing Rhode Island's budget to California's, and you said add a few zeros to it, I did it. We spend $300 billion. Our budget this year in California is $300 billion. Yours is $9 billion. If you saved the same percentage of your budget from the pension and Medicaid reforms that you did in Rhode Island, if we did that in California, that would be an extra $15 billion a year. Now, you saved $500 million a year and you are actually funding your community college program. Here in California, we announce community college programs and then we don't fund them. And the net result is that just takes money out of other parts of the budget. So you did something extraordinary, which most governors of the United States don't do. And as compensation, you're now in a re-election where you are attacked by both the left and the right. How does that feel? What's it like? And how do you handle it?
Yeah, it doesn't always feel good. It is true. What David said is true. It's incredibly difficult to be a kind of moderate, middle-of-the-road problem solver in American politics today. I'm attacked from the right on, my position on guns and gun safety, on all kinds of positions related to immigration. I stood up for the DACA students in Rhode Island, attacked from the left. This may not shock you, but I'm not exactly beloved by the teachers union or the firefighters or the police. But at the end of the day, I think it's the only way to do public service. As I said, it's the only reason to do these jobs is to use the position to solve problems, level the playing field, create opportunity. It's an extraordinary honor to be in public service, and I on a personal level, you said to make it personal, for me, I'd rather get it right and fix things and hopefully get reelected. But if I don't, I'm okay. I can live with that. Because we've made huge changes, huge reform. And I told you my story in the beginning. I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't had an education, public buses, public schools, public libraries. And I think the next generation deserves the same chances. On a more political level, our democracy needs a balance. If we stay stuck where we are as a nation, in this extreme partisanship, this movie won't end well. And so I am trying to chart out a course of moderation and bipartisanship, and frankly, engagement with the academic sector, with the business sector, with the nonprofit sector, and show that it's possible to do that and also be politically popular. I have had so many private conversations with politicians, mayors, governors, legislators, who've called me privately, and I won't name names, who say, Gina, how'd you do what you did? And I explain it, and they say, I know, but if I do that, I won't get reelected. No one ever says, I don't agree with you, I don't think that's the right position. They say over and over, yeah, I'm with you on the merits, but I won't get reelected. So I say, well, I did. And so it is, although I'm comfortable not getting reelected and do the right thing, it's so important that I continue to get reelected, because we need to, and you guys, we need to get behind people who are going to show that you can fix things and also face a tough election and all the mudslinging that comes with it, but prevail in the end. Because it's what people want.
So you mentioned, we're in the heart of Silicon Valley, the center of innovation, fail fast, all the rest. And everybody here knows how that works. Governments are monopolies. And generally inside a monopoly, people are not willing to innovate, as you mentioned. People are not willing to take a risk. If anything, their jobs are more at risk if they do something bad. There's little to gain currently, under the way things are currently structured, for them to do something more innovative and to take that kind of risk. How do you handle that, especially moving from the private sector into the government sector, where you've got to make your government more efficient, more effective?
Yeah. It's one of the challenges in government is how do you attract top talent and motivate them without using monetary compensation? It is a challenge. Yeah. And as you say, there is no incentive for risk-taking by elected politicians or by civil servants. The entire system, we pay based on longevity. The longer you stay, the more you make. There's not a performance-based pay culture. So it is absolutely a challenge to attract and motivate the best and the brightest. A couple things that we have done. I really have tried to create a culture, a really kind of truly a mission-driven culture. I say to people, just come work for me for a year or 2 or 3. Give me some piece of your career. I promise you we'll do great things together. And when you look back on it 20 years from now, it'll be one of the most fulfilling things you've done. So as a result, I have to give folks a lot of latitude. And I have to be willing to take risk and fail or take political abuse. But it has been effective in telling people, if you think about government, you woke up this morning, turned on the tap, you get clean water, you go outside, hopefully your roads and bridges and infrastructure is well maintained. If it is, the government's working. If it's not, it's not. You might send your kids to public school. Government matters. It's all around us. People you hire in your companies, you want them to have had a good education. So I tell my people, our work is among the most important work that anyone could do. And people are counting on us to get it right. We have to get it right. And so I use that to motivate people. We've also, I've created what we're calling an innovation league. And I've hired an innovation officer. And we allow cohorts of people to sign up to be in our Innovation League. We give them time, 10% of their time out of their regular work week to focus on solving a particular problem with the Innovation League. And that has been incredibly motivating. You know, the people who do the job have the answers. They're the ones who know how to fix things. So we give them a chance to be part of this innovation group and then to show it to their colleagues. And you know, we're always looking for ways to motivate folks in the, like I said, in the absence of traditional money compensation.
So here's a question that this audience will understand particularly well. California's top income tax rate is over 13%, and we tax capital gains at ordinary rates. Not everybody in this audience might know this fact, which is that 150,000 of us pay 50% of all the personal income tax in California, in a state of 40 million people. And personal income tax is 70% of our general fund revenue, which is $130 billion a year. But if you look outside today, and you said this to me earlier as we were walking around the campus, California is a pretty remarkable place. It's hard to leave. It's very beautiful. And we're not that close to a bunch of other states. I've been to Rhode Island. It's a beautiful state, but it's easier to leave. You can go to Massachusetts pretty easily. You can go to the other surrounding states pretty easily if the tax rates are lower and all the rest. So what's it like to compete in that world where people can depart more easily than they can depart a paradise like this?
Yeah. By the way, I just want everyone here to know our top rate's 5.9%.
Stop advertising.
5.9%.
Cut off for Mike. We need you to stay in California.
Our corporate tax rate's the lowest in the Northeast. Every time we've touched tax policy in the past 10 years has been to cut taxes. And you can't beat Rhode Island in the spring, summer, and fall.
How's the winter?
Like I said, spring, summer, and fall. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. Just to perspective, Rhode Island's about 1 million people, about 1,200 square miles, roughly the size of Yosemite-ish. So it is easy to leave. That means, I have argued, that's why we have to be that much more competitive. And, you know, that's why, you know, when I first took office, I said, okay, what are all the ways in which we are uncompetitive? And I have a list. And we've been attacking the list. We've cut thousands of regulations since I've been governor to make it easier to do business. I'm leading an effort to do permitting all online, even at the city level. I want to be the first state in America where the city permitting is completely coordinated with the state level and it's all online. The community college. No, I need to compete. You know, it's absolutely true. We need to compete. Now, I'll tell you this. In Rhode Island, you can get on a train and be in Boston in a half an hour. 35% less expensive to live and do business in Providence than Boston, by the most recent count, and I actually think it's probably greater. We have Brown, we have Rhode Island School of Design. You can be on a beach anywhere in half an hour, and it's a wonderful quality of life. So we have a great product to sell. We're in a wonderful ecosystem. People don't leave, ironically. I've talked to many companies, they say no, they have an extremely high retention rate in companies. So the challenge, though, I see it as because we're not Boston or Silicon Valley, we have to be that much better. And we are, we are. For me, it makes me hungrier, more aggressive, more creative, and sometimes in crisis is opportunity. Why did we solve our pension problem and other people haven't? Because we had to. We had a city go bankrupt, we had to. We couldn't raise tax. 13% will not fly in Rhode Island. I wouldn't suggest that anyway, but you can't do it. And the constraint, I have said, because of that, let's work within our constraints and flourish as, the Wall Street Journal has commented on some of my work, and they said Rhode Island, an island of rationality. Look at our neighbors. Look at Connecticut. Blossoming debt as far as you can see. So anyway, my point of it is, I want to be, it's okay to be small if you stand out in all the right ways. And we have many natural assets, and if we do some right policy moves, the state can flourish. It is flourishing.
So speaking of periodicals, the New York Times regards Rhode Island as a national model, and the way it's addressing the opioid crisis, which is centered on New England. We see less of it in California. And there's a panel coming in after this one on the opioid crisis. How do you handle it there? What's been your approach for, why did you become the national model?
Because I've spent too much time with parents beside themselves because their 20-year-old or 22-year-old son or daughter has just died of an overdose. I can't tell you how many moms and dads I've held sobbing. And this is in every neighborhood, every zip code, every income level, every race. It's a disease, and we have to do more. Just when I was getting on the plane to come here, a friend of mine lost his 23-year-old grandson. He overdosed and died last Friday night. So one of the thing about being governor, which is a blessing and different from being a senator, a congressman, is you are with the people you serve every day. And it's a great thing. You're in these communities side by side with your friends and neighbors. And so you don't have the luxury of not performing. I have approached this issue probably with more urgency than anything I've done in public life, for the reason that I said. Some of the things that we've done have been controversial, but again, I think you need to be innovative and take risk and try things differently. The New York Times piece was focused on the fact that we have a strategy of all roads leading to treatment. Addiction is a disease. Recovery is possible. We want to get everybody into treatment. We want to treat this in every way that we can. One of the most successful interventions that we've done is providing the full range of medical-assisted treatment to people in prison. Controversial. It used to be, and we're the only state in the country doing this, it used to be if you were a drug user and you went to prison, you'd have to go cold turkey, abstinence, no more drugs. But we know, I'm sure there are a few doctors in this audience, we know that's not, when you come out, you're much more susceptible to an overdose and dying of an overdose after having that period of not using drugs. So we said we're going to do the full complement of medical-assisted treatment because different people respond to different kinds of medicine. The state's going to pay for it. We pay for it. And we administer it in prisons. 2 weeks ago, or a month ago, JAMA put out a report showing that in Rhode Island, because of this intervention, we've had a 61% drop in overdose deaths from people who had been in prison. That is an astounding success. We know we are saving lives. And we're going to continue to innovate in all kinds of different ways because we're losing too many people. It starts with prevention, and so we're about to launch a big prevention campaign. Last year, we also passed a somewhat controversial bill limiting the number of prescription pills that somebody can get on a first prescription of a painkiller to roughly 6 days, so that you don't get your wisdom teeth out and get 30 days of OxyContin, or get your knee replaced and get a 30-day supply. It's 6 days. Now, the doctors didn't like that, and I understand their viewpoint. They didn't want to be told how to practice. But we have a public health crisis, and again, the results from that have been, astounding. It's not totally dissimilar, I would argue, from the gun debate. We have to reduce supply. Raise awareness, reduce supply, and get everybody into treatment. And don't give up until we solve the problem.
Let me get your advice on California's pension issues. So our numbers, of course, are much larger. We have $500 billion worth of retirement liabilities in California at the official discount rate. That's more than $1 trillion. That means that more than $1 trillion, and it's already happening, will be stripped from school districts, local and state governments. The net result is California revenues are way up, in part because we had a 30% tax increase to that in excess of 13% rate. And most of that tax increase is going to an increase in spending on pensions, retiree health care, and unproductive spending on health care. If you were the governor or a leader in California, what would you do? What would you recommend we do?
Well, I would say this. I'm not familiar with the precise details of your pension system, and they're all different. They're all different. And what we did is not necessarily cookie cutter to apply here. I also will say this is a very tough issue. Tough to understand, tough to get people to care about, and brutally difficult politics. With that as background, I would tackle it. So when I was doing this, my tagline was, "This is math, not politics." And I personally spent every night I would go in myself to loud, crowded, angry union halls. I was not as, pleasantly received as you're receiving me. And talk to them honestly. I would say, look, I'm sorry, I'm here with bad news. And if I were you, I'd be mad at me too. But here's the thing. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at the guys that came before me who lied to you. This system is broken. And very simply, I would just explain how it was broken. Now, I don't think I convinced them at all. I know I didn't. Some I did. Many, though, said to me, okay, Gina, I don't like you. I don't agree with you. But I know you're telling me the truth, and I appreciate you coming here and being willing to talk to us. I did the same thing with the legislature. I did the same thing with the business community. And essentially, I said, I am not going away until this problem is fixed. You don't want to do it in this session? Fine, I'll come back next session. You want to do it then? Fine, I'll come back again. I am not going away until we fix this problem. And I also spent a lot of time explaining the consequences of doing nothing. And to me, that was the most compelling. That's when you get people's attention. They cut middle school sports in your school district. Get with me on pensions and we'll restore them. They cut aid to cities and towns, which has resulted in reduced bus service, closing libraries, reduced trash pickup. Get with me on the pensions and we'll fix it. Anyway, the bottom line is I would take the bull by the horns, and also I would embrace groups like yours. I mean, Govern for California has an incredibly important role to play. It's an everybody issue. The future of your state and the vibrancy of this economy is totally dependent on solving this issue. And so someone's going to solve it. One thing I learned in the venture business was problems only get bigger, they don't get smaller, right? When I sat on the board, you hear from the CEO who was missing his numbers. Next quarter is the one we're gonna blow it out. Never happened that way. Or there's always one nut on the P&L and the cost structure is too big. It's not going down. It's not gonna go down until you deal with it. Pension is the same thing. The longer you wait, it's a moral issue. The longer you wait, the more people will get hurt. That is a fact. So decide to deal with it, step out in front, and pursue it with determination until you fix it.
All right, last question for me, and then we will open it up. We have time for questions from the audience. There are ever times when you ask yourself if it's worth it? For those of us who follow pensions closely, this is the only serious pension reform in the entire country, cutting an unfunded liability in half, which is, it's like today's equivalent of fighting the Civil War. It's brutal. Nobody is happy, and there's a lot of damage. And the vast majority of politicians don't want to attack it for all the reasons that you said. And the net result of doing something where you end up resupplying money to middle school sports in Rhode Island, in San Francisco, our unified school district in San Francisco, where there are 55,000 kids, this year will be able to devote a grand total of only 29% of its budget to teacher salaries because pension and retiree healthcare spending more than doubled in the last 5 years. So imagine if you had kids in that school district.
Yeah. By the way, when I was, sorry to interrupt, when I was doing this, I had 2 kids in Providence Public School, little kids. And one of the things that motivated me the most was I became friendly with my son's first grade teacher. She was an amazing teacher, super committed, probably in her mid-30s. There early, stayed late, like so many teachers. A teacher in their mid-30s in a pension system that's 45% funded does not have a secure retirement. When that teacher needs her pension to be there in 30 years, it was not going to be there. And I couldn't, in good conscience, drop my kids off, entrust my kids to her, be in charge of the pension, and not try to fix it. Today, I feel great. I know her pension's secure. It's going to be there for her. And frankly, she deserves it.
All right, so inquiring minds want to know, do you ever ask yourself, is this worth it? You got a husband and you got 2 kids.
Do you mean how many times a
money.
day? How many times a week?
Yeah.
Define how often. No.
Yeah.
No, it's a great thing to do. I think we've secured the future of Rhode Island. We're halfway there. I think we're in like the 4th inning of a great economic comeback, and so we need to keep going. I shared on some of these indexes. We started 50 out of 50. We're now in the middle. I want to get to the top. I'm not happy being in the middle. We can be. We deserve it, and that's where we need to be. I also think, as I said, we need to get our country's politics back to a place where it's okay to be a pragmatic, center-of-the-road problem solver that embraces business and innovation and is a place for everybody at the table to dig in and solve these problems. It's like we have to do that. So if I can play some small role as a governor to get us to that place, then that's what I want to do, which isn't to say it's always fun, because it's not. It's difficult, it's grueling, the pace, I'm trying to become more patient. You have to be patient if you're in government, because change comes slowly, but it's absolutely worth it, and the reality is the stakes are higher than they've ever been. And so every one of us as Americans has a duty to serve right now in America, given the challenges we're facing. I've chosen to run. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be that crazy. But I'm doing my part, as are you, and I feel lucky to be able to do it.
All right, let's open it up for questions. I can't see anything anyway, so let's see. All right, I see one hand back there. There are 2 hands back there. Go ahead. I see Chris Boskin. That's enough. Go ahead. Speak.
Very interesting. And when you finish as governor in Rhode Island, would you consider coming to California at all?
No, the taxes are too high.
Yeah. So my question is, Rhode Island is, Yosemite-ish, and 1 million people. We have 30 million people here in California.
40.
Or 40, sorry, David. You have engaged citizens. Sacramento is way far away.
Yeah.
Most of the people, I would say, in this room have no idea what's going on in Sacramento. We have 120 legislators, and they go crazy. We've lost a lot of the press covering it, so it sounds, just from your saying how you've brought on these sides together, that you've really engaged your Rhode Islanders in the process of what you're doing. We don't have the same thing, where Californians are not as engaged in their state government as I think they should be. So just love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I would say I think lack of engagement is a problem everywhere. And it is true that it's different in a bigger place. Rhode Island is small, it's cohesive, and in some ways easier. In some ways that makes it harder. We all know each other. Everybody knows people who were personally affected by the pension, personally affected by all these issues that I've talked about. I think the way to engage people is to drive home in very concrete ways the consequences of not solving these problems. That is the problem. When I first started to talk about pensions and Medicaid, I was all about the numbers, and they're big. That it doesn't really convince very many people. So you have to bring it down to, David, Gina, why should you care about fixing this? And really getting folks to grapple with the consequences of not fixing these problems. Now, in my case, when I became state treasurer, one of the first things I did was we lowered our discount rate, which had the effect of more accurately showing our unfunded liability. It went way up. And we were going to have trouble balancing that year's budget. So I really used that as an opportunity to say, we have a deadline. We have a deadline, we have to solve this by this point in time. Now the reality is it wasn't, because we could have, passed the buck, but we used that as a forcing mechanism to get everybody together. And really spending the time to convince business people, the nonprofit sector has a huge amount to lose. I remember I went into a group of people who were advocates for the homeless. I tried to get their support for pensions. And at the beginning, they really thought I was crazy. They had no idea why. They were even like, okay, fine, we'll give you 10 minutes, but I don't know why we're here. This has nothing to do with us. We don't want to tussle with the unions. We don't want to get into trouble. We don't want to have to do with controversy, and we don't have pensions. And I said, okay, here's what it has to do with you. Your fund, and I had all the numbers, like your funding is going to get cut by this year, cut by that next year, cut by that the following year. Then they start listening. So anyway, I think that's, you need a public leader who will be the face of it, supported by everyone else to say, we're sick of it, we're finally going to solve the problem.
I would point out, by the way, that your city of Palo Alto has just adopted a new transparency measure for pensions owed by the city of Palo Alto using a more reasonable discount rate. It's an alternative measure, but it's one way of showing the real consequences for your local budget. So you might want to get involved there. Who had their hands up? Yes. Yeah, you.
Do you see a path to changing our politics in a way that makes moderate policies more palatable and gets people with these more pragmatic, cross-cutting positions in power?
Yeah, I'm trying to do it. Like, we have to get, first of all, people have to run. High quality people have to run. And then, if you see public leaders who you feel are carving out that path, get behind them. Because there'll be plenty of special interests who won't get behind them. And so the people have to overpower or at least go toe-to-toe with the special interest on either side. I will say people are more engaged now than at any time since I've been in public life, and that's a good thing. So we have to harness it, keep it going, and then people like me have to deliver. There's this all-time high level of cynicism with good reason. So the other thing about making government work and actually producing results, my hope is over time it'll help rebuild people's trust in government.
Question? Yes. Everybody hear the question?
It's a good question.
When the governor retires, how does she ensure that her successor doesn't undo all the reforms?
The honest answer is, in anything you do in government, there is no foolproof answer to that. It is absolutely possible somebody could come in and reverse it. I think it's highly unlikely because it's one thing to do a change that's difficult and then see the reward. It's another. It'd be very hard to undo this because you would create a lot of pain. You'd have to then raise taxes, cut services. So it's not like a lot of people, politicians were afraid the first time around to be with me. I actually think they would be just as afraid to undo it, because the consequences of going backwards would be very bad. As to the reform, the other thing I would say is if you're going to do it, commit yourselves to a big fundamental change. So don't just say a slight increase to the retirement age. Like the way we did it for both pensions and Medicaid is we started at the top. We said, this is what we want to achieve. We want a system that's this well funded. We want to achieve this much in savings, da-da-da-da-da. And then there's 100 different ways to get there. The way almost everyone I've seen approach pension reform is the opposite. They say from the bottom up. They say, what if we increase the retirement age by a little? What if we do this? And I don't think that's the best way to solve it. So as a result, we did fundamental things, like we moved to a defined contribution. We tied the cost of living increases to the actual rate of return. So there's a lot of features of the reform that are designed to make it robust in the here and now, but also sustainable. And that is, I think that's very important.
We have time for one more, Mark? One more question? Is that oh yeah, thank you.
I'll just make a comment as a Brown alumnus that 13% is quite a lot, and you've convinced me to check out what Rhode Island has to offer. So.
I love it. That was worth the trip. That was worth the trip.
A planted advertisement for Rhode Island. That is, well, thank you, Governor.
Thanks
Thanks so much.